Hey everyone, it's Lawrence here from StudioHawk, and today we're going to be talking about how to optimize your WordPress website for better performance. So page speed is pretty critical these days in terms of SEO, and it's a question that comes up a lot. How do you make sure your website, especially on WordPress, is performing as it should and performing at a better rate once you do some optimization and tweaks and hacks to make sure that it is just always presenting to Google as a really quick loading website and really useful for users. So let's dive into some tips and tricks right now and run through how to optimize our website for better performance on WordPress. So the first thing you want to do is get a sense of basically how it's performing currently. And one really direct way of doing that, there's a bunch of website tools out there, PageSpeed Insights. It's built by Google to tell you exactly how you're performing in terms of load time, first contentful paint, and all those important metrics that Google wants to see when it looks at things like core web vitals. So if we jump into PageSpeed Insights, and I've just put in a website to see how it's performing currently, it tells me its performance, its accessibility, its practices, and how it's going in terms of SEO performance. Now, I don't really take this as a complete Bible. You have to really go through and curate what's wrong with the website from a performance standpoint and figure out exactly what it's trying to describe to you, because it can lead you off in different directions, and this is why having an SEO specialist working your website is a lot more ideal to figure these things out. But if we jump down and have a look through, it'll tell us our first contentful paint, largest contentful paint, and all these different things around how the website's performing. And where I really like to directly look is into the opportunities and estimated savings that it presents us. So here I can see that it's telling us that there's a lot of images that are served in next-gen formats that could be slowing the website down. There's also JavaScript that we could reduce because it's being unused. And there's different things that we can look at optimizing through that and removing or replacing or just updating because it's actually dragging out our website speed. So a really great way to get that sense of how it's performing. But what happens a lot of the time as well is people put in their homepage as part of looking at that performance. You got to look at your different pages on your website and figure out what's going on those different pages, because those have different elements. If they have different elements, they might be loading faster or slower than your homepage. So it's good to always check through different pages and even the templates that you're using behind those pages as well to make sure that all of them are completely optimized and all of them are running at the same rate. And when we put in a different page, it's giving us practically the same score, which means it's built really in the same way on different pages, but there might be some differences in terms of images and different scripts that it's using on those pages as well. So you want to go through and dive through each one of those pages that you have on your website, the different templates, the content, the blog template that you're using, and just identify through and figure out where that lag's coming from. So after that, you really want to go back to your website and look at, in terms of website performance, your hosting provider. So what I see a lot of the time is people buy the domain of GoDaddy or they buy the domain of Crazy Domains and they set up the hosting through there. But of course, over time, the more that your website develops and the more that your website performs better in terms of traffic, the more users that are coming through, you're going to need to update your website's hosting platform, because you can get on a really starter package on those websites, which is fine. But eventually, if you have tens of thousands of users coming through, that system's going to break eventually. So look into your hosting provider and make sure that you're on the package and the server that's actually going to be able to maintain the amount of users coming through and the types of things you want to do on your website. If you want to have a really swish, heavy JavaScript website, that starter pack is probably not going to get you far. In terms of hosting providers that I can recommend, there's WP Engine, which has a really good all-in-one platform for creating staging websites. The themes that they use are really strong. And there's also SiteGround is actually a very qualified hosting provider as well. There's a lot out there. Shop around and make sure that whatever hosting provider you're using is giving you maximum performance for the budget that you have. The third thing I recommend around WordPress websites is updating everything practically. First, starting off with plugins. When you do update plugins though, be careful. There is an inclination to see, a website, my plugin's not updated. I got to update that, and hitting through and hitting update on all your plugins. But what can happen, it can just break your website. So definitely back up beforehand and do it very slowly and methodically, and don't try to update everything at once, because that can really break the website. The same goes through any themes that you currently use and anything around security and patches and, for bugs and things like that WordPress provide. And just make sure it's always running on the updated version to keep it efficient. There's a really great platform called Koalaboss, which actually helps you maintain, if you're hosting multiple websites, keeping a lot of these things updated. And it's a really nice platform to use to keep everything organized, because it can get very complex if you're running 10 to 20 different websites and you need somewhere to make sure. You need a centralized place to tell you which plugins aren't updated and which plugins need to be updated. It's a really great way to have a centralized dashboard to make sure that if you've got 10 to 20 websites, all of them are kept in one place, and you can see what needs to be updated and keep those alerts really on the pulse, and make sure that you can approach those when you can. The next thing I recommend is making sure that you have the latest updated version of PHP, which is the scripting language that powers WordPress. So you want to make sure that you have the most stable version, and it's usually the most updated version as well. Again, make sure you back up your website before you do this in whatever platform you're using, because once that update comes through, it's permanent. So if it needs to be rolled back, make sure you have a backup behind that to make sure that you can roll back when it's needed. Now, this is where we get into plugin territory. One thing I recommend periodically is going through your plugins that you're using. Over the space of 2 to 3 years, you could download all these plugins and install them and just completely forget about them. So go back, go to the plugins, look at the graveyard of things that you've deactivated or haven't used in a long time. If you've updated a theme, you may have a plugin from that particular theme that you haven't used in a long time. Deactivate and delete them, because they can really slow down the website speed, especially if they're being loaded into things that it shouldn't. So always keep them updated, always go through periodically, and make sure that you're deleting ones that you aren't using. The next part of plugin land is making sure that you're using only high quality plugins. Now, with the introduction of tools like ChatGPT, people are saying, hey, I can make my own plugin really, really easily through that platform, which is great, but also they're not coded by a really qualified developer. Having high quality plugins means they're optimized, they're constantly updated, and they're not made by someone that isn't trusted or doesn't have a lot of experience behind them as well. So when you're looking at plugins for redirections, SEO specific plugins like Yoast, Rank Math, they're companies that are built behind them as well, and quite qualified and quite experienced in keeping those plugins updated and fresh and optimized for the platform too. So whatever plugin you're using, it may seem great on surface level. Check the reviews, check who's made it, and check how recently it's been updated as well, because it's quite important. That can really lag down performance and site speed as well. Be careful about what plugins you use and make sure they're high quality. The next few things, so looking at the theme of the website that you use, WordPress provides really basic free themes, which are great to get started with. They're quite lean too, so what you want to look for is that the theme is lightweight, but also visually appealing, which is a really fine balance. So I've had a look through a couple of WordPress themes that are quite lightweight, like Sydney, Bottega, GeneratePress. StudioPress is actually provided by WP Engine as well. Look through these different themes that you could potentially put on your website, test them out, look at the demo sites, and even run them through this performance test to make sure whatever theme you're using, it's solid, is not too visually heavy in terms of what it's actually going to load up on the website. And that leads to my next thing, which is making sure that the images that you're using behind your website are optimized too. The number of times I've loaded up a website and there's a huge 10 megabyte, 20 megabyte image that's loaded in the header, that can really drag down performance on a website. Make sure that you're using a plugin or going in and optimizing those images manually and chunking them down so they're actually serving at the right scale, and also whatever you can do around making sure that the image itself is not too weighty and at the right file size, so when it loads up, it's nice and quick for Google as well. And that's it. By following these steps, you can optimize your website's performance by looking through and checking how it's performing currently, optimizing things like plugins and images, and getting better hosting on your platform and using a really lightweight theme. All those things should present you a great opportunity to have your website loading up really fast on WordPress. Thanks everyone. We'll see you in the next one.